The rain hammered against the windows of Healing Touch Spa like an angry visitor demanding entry. Marcus Thompson looked up from the towel he was folding, his weathered hands pausing mid-motion as he listened to the storm outside. At 42, he learned to read the moods of Portland's weather like a favorite book. Tonight's chapter was titled, "Stay Inside and Count Your Blessings." The spa's amber lighting cast warm shadows across the modest reception area, where essential oil diffusers hummed quietly, releasing the scent of lavender and eucalyptus into the air. Everything here was deliberate in its simplicity. No marble countertops, no gold fixtures, no pretense. Just honest work in an honest space. The kind of place where people came to heal rather than to be seen. Marcus had built this sanctuary from scratch after his world had imploded 3 years ago. The memories of that corporate nightmare still visited him sometimes, usually in the quiet hours before dawn when guilt and regret liked to hold court in his chest. But tonight, as he prepared to close up shop, he felt something he'd almost forgotten how to feel. Peace. The front door chimed, its gentle sound barely audible above the storm. Marcus glanced at the clock, 9:47 p.m. Well past closing time, but he'd learned never to turn away someone seeking refuge from Portland's mercurial weather. "We're actually closed," he called out, not looking up from his folding. "But if you need to wait out the storm, you're welcome to sit in the lobby for a few minutes." Silence. Then the soft click of expensive heels on hardwood floors. When Marcus finally raised his eyes, the world seemed to shift on its axis. The woman standing in his doorway wasn't just beautiful, she was commanding, the kind of presence that didn't ask permission to dominate a room. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, not a strand out of place despite the storm outside. Her coat was charcoal gray, probably worth more than Marcus made in 6 months, and it didn't have a single wrinkle. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. They were the color of storm clouds, and they held an exhaustion so profound it made his chest ache in recognition. "Are you Marcus Thompson?" Her voice was silk wrapped around steel, cultured and controlled, but there was something underneath a tremor so faint he almost missed it. "Yes." Marcus set down the towel, his body language open but cautious. "And you are?" "Victoria Sterling." She said it like he should know the name, like it should mean something. When his expression remained neutral, something flickered across her face: surprise, maybe even relief. "I have a proposition for you." Marcus waited. In his experience, propositions that arrived with the storm were rarely the kind you wanted to hear. Victoria stepped further into the room, her heels clicking against the floor with mechanical precision. She moved like someone who'd been trained never to show weakness, every gesture calculated for maximum impact. But Marcus had spent 3 years reading bodies, understanding the stories people carried in their shoulders, their necks, their clenched fists. This woman was wound tighter than a piano wire. "I need to sleep," she said simply. "Really sleep. For 1 full night. And I'm willing to pay you $1 million for it." Marcus blinked, then blinked again. "Excuse me?" "You heard me correctly." Victoria's voice didn't waver. $1 million. 1 night. No intimacy, no touching, no expectations beyond your presence. I just need someone trustworthy nearby so I can sleep without. She stopped herself, jaw clenching. Without interruption, the towel slipped from Marcus's hands. He stared at her, trying to process what he just heard. $1 million. The number was so absurd it felt fictional, like Monopoly money or a lottery ticket dream. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I think you might have the wrong impression about what kind of establishment this is. I know exactly what this is." Victoria's eyes swept the room, taking in the simple wooden furniture, the handwritten price list on the wall, the collection of Emma's artwork taped to the reception desk. "I've had you investigated." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. "Investigated?" Marcus Thompson, 42 years old, divorced, single father to Emma Thompson, age 7. Former chief financial officer at Meridian Industries, resigned under circumstances that were complicated. Victoria's recitation was clinical, emotionless. "You left a 6-figure salary to open a massage therapy business in Portland, Oregon. You live in a 2-bedroom apartment 6 blocks from here. Your daughter attends Riverside Elementary, where she's on the honor roll and plays in the school band. You drive a 2018 Honda Civic with a dent in the rear bumper, and you haven't taken a vacation in 3 years." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. "How do you..." I'm very good at learning about people I might need to trust. Victoria's expression softened slightly. I'm not here to hurt you or your daughter, Mr. Thompson. I'm here because I'm desperate, and my research indicates that you're a man of integrity, a man who understands the value of privacy and discretion. Your research. Marcus's voice was flat. Lady, I don't know who you are or why you think you can just walk in here and... I'm the CEO of Sterling Enterprises, Victoria interrupted. Perhaps you've heard of us? Marcus had. Sterling Enterprises was one of the largest private equity firms on the West Coast, with fingers in everything from tech startups to renewable energy. The kind of company that made headlines when it breathed wrong. The kind of money that could buy silence or destroy lives, depending on the mood of the person writing the checks. I see you recognize the name, Victoria continued. Then you understand that I'm not someone who makes offers lightly. $1 million, Mr. Thompson. That's enough to pay off your daughter's college fund, move to a better neighborhood, maybe even expand this little business of yours. Marcus studied her face, looking for the catch. Because there was always a catch. Why me? Because you're the only person I can find who isn't impressed by money. Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. Do you know how rare that is? How many people I've approached with similar offers who said yes before I'd even finished explaining the terms? And what makes you think I'm different? Because you're still standing there asking questions instead of reaching for your phone to call your bank. Marcus couldn't argue with that logic. $1 million was life-changing money, the kind of sum that could solve every problem he'd been losing sleep over for the past 3 years. Emma's college fund, the leaky roof in their apartment, the constant worry about what would happen if he got sick or injured and couldn't work. But something about this woman, about the desperation hiding behind her perfectly composed facade, made every instinct he'd developed as a father scream warnings. What happened to you? He asked quietly. Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. That's not part of the arrangement. It is if you want me to consider it. They stared at each other across the small space, the storm outside providing a soundtrack to their standoff. Marcus could see the war being fought behind Victoria's eyes, the need for help warring with a lifetime of learned self-reliance. I haven't slept more than 2 hours consecutively in over a year, she said finally. My doctor says it's stress-related insomnia, but sleeping pills don't work. Neither do meditation, yoga, or any of the other solutions that work for normal people. The only time I've been able to sleep properly in the past 18 months was in a hotel in Tokyo, and that was because there was a language barrier and I felt anonymous. Safe. Safe from what? Victoria's jaw tightened. From being Victoria Sterling. From being watched, judged, expected to perform. From being responsible for 17,000 employees and their families. From being. She trailed off, shaking her head. From being myself. Marcus felt his chest tighten with unwanted sympathy. He recognized the exhaustion in her voice, the bone-deep weariness that came from carrying too much weight for too long. He'd worn that same exhaustion like a second skin during his final months at Meridian Industries. $1 million, he said slowly. Cash. Transferred to your account tonight if you agree. Marcus looked around his spa, at the business he'd built from nothing, at the framed photo of Emma on his desk. His daughter, gap-toothed and grinning, holding the trophy she'd won for the school science fair. The little girl who trusted him to be her hero, who believed her daddy could fix anything. What kind of example would he be setting if he took this money? What kind of man would that make him? I'm sorry, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was turning down. But I can't accept your offer. Victoria blinked, as if she'd misheard him. I'm sorry, what? I said no. Marcus picked up the towel he dropped, his hands surprisingly steady. I don't sell my presence, Miss Sterling. Not for any price. But it's $1 million. It is. And I'm sure it would solve a lot of problems for me and my daughter. Marcus looked directly at her, his blue eyes calm and resolute. But I need Emma to learn what kind of man her father is. And that's worth more to me than any amount of money. Victoria stared at him as if he'd spoken in a foreign language. You're actually saying no. I'm saying no. To $1 million. To $1 million. Victoria laughed. But it was a broken sound, like glass shattering. Do you have any idea how many people would kill for this opportunity? How many men I've approached who would have said yes without even hearing the full terms? I'm not those men. No, Victoria said softly, studying his face with new intensity. You're not, are you? Marcus finished folding the towel, his movements deliberate and calm. Is there anything else I can help you with, Miss Sterling? Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. For a moment, she looked lost, like a child who'd been told that wishes didn't come true and fairy tales were just stories. Then her corporate mask slipped back into place, smooth and impenetrable. No, she said. I think you've been quite helpful enough. She turned to go, her heels clicking against the floor with renewed purpose. But as she reached the door, she paused, her hand on the handle. Mr. Thompson? Yes? Why did you really leave Meridian Industries? Marcus felt his chest tighten. The question he'd been dreading, the one that still woke him up in cold sweats sometimes. What did your investigation tell you? That you resigned suddenly after some kind of scandal. That there were accusations made against you that were later recanted. That you left a promising career behind for. She gestured around the spa. This. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, weighing his words. I was falsely accused of having an inappropriate relationship with my supervisor. The accusations were designed to discredit me when I discovered some irregularities in the company's financial reporting. Irregularities? Embezzlement. Fraud. The kind of thing that sends people to prison. Marcus's voice was steady, but Victoria could hear the old pain underneath. I tried to do the right thing, and they tried to destroy me for it. Made me out to be a predator who was sleeping his way to the top. But you were cleared of the charges. Eventually, after my marriage fell apart, after my reputation was destroyed, after I'd lost everything I'd worked for, Marcus met her eyes. That's why I can't take your money, Miss Sterling. Not because I don't need it, but because I know what it's like to be bought and sold, and I swore I'd never let my daughter watch me become that version of myself again. Victoria's face went very still. I see. Do you? I think. Victoria paused, her hands still on the door handle. I think you're the first person who's ever said no to me without wanting something in return. I'm not saying no to hurt you, Marcus said gently. I'm saying no to protect both of us. You need help, Miss Sterling, but not the kind that money can buy. Victoria's laugh was bitter. You sound like my therapist. You have a therapist? I have 3. None of them seem to understand that some problems are too big for talking to fix. Marcus studied her face, noting the dark circles under her eyes, the way her shoulders carried tension like a physical weight. When's the last time you felt safe? The question seemed to catch Victoria off guard. Safe? Really safe. Not secure, not protected by money or lawyers or bodyguards, just safe. Victoria was quiet for so long that Marcus wondered if she'd heard him. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't remember. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that went deeper than sympathy. The couch in the lobby is comfortable, he said quietly. If you need somewhere to wait out the storm. Victoria turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. I don't need charity. It's not charity, it's just a couch. Another long silence. Then Victoria let go of the door handle and walked back into the main room, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd learned to navigate the world like a minefield. She sat on the edge of the couch, her posture perfect, her hands folded in her lap. Marcus finished his closing routine, turning off the essential oil diffusers, dimming the lights, locking the cash register, normal tasks that felt suddenly significant under the weight of Victoria's presence. Why did you become a massage therapist? Victoria asked suddenly. Marcus looked up from wiping down the reception desk. Because people carry their pain in their bodies. And sometimes, if you know how to listen with your hands, you can help them let it go. And you know how to listen? I'm learning. Every day. Marcus sat down in the chair across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. What about you? Why did you become a CEO? Victoria's smile was sharp. Because my father told me I wasn't strong enough to survive in a man's world. I decided to prove him wrong. Did you? I own a company worth $3 billion. I have a personal net worth that puts me in the top 1% of the top 1%. I can make a phone call and have a senator's career ended by lunch. Victoria's voice was steady, but Marcus heard the hollowness underneath. You tell me. I think you proved you could survive, Marcus said carefully, but I'm not sure you proved you were living. Victoria's eyes flashed. Careful, Mr. Thompson. You're beginning to sound like you're psychoanalyzing me. I'm just making an observation. What observation? That you offered me $1 million to sleep in the same room as you. That's not the action of someone who's living. That's the action of someone who's drowning. Victoria stood up abruptly, her composure cracking. You don't know anything about me. I know you're tired, Marcus said gently. I know you're scared. And I know you're alone, or you wouldn't be here. I'm not alone. I have employees, board members, investors. Those aren't relationships. Those are transactions. Victoria's face went pale. You don't understand. You can't understand what it's like to be responsible for so many people, to have so much riding on every decision you make. The pressure, the isolation, the constant fear that you're going to make the wrong choice and destroy everything you've built. You're right, Marcus said. I don't understand that level of responsibility, but I understand guilt. I understand shame. And I understand what it's like to feel like you're failing the people who depend on you. Victoria sank back down onto the couch, her corporate armor finally cracking. I think I'm losing my mind. Why? Because I can't stop thinking about her. Who? Victoria was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. My sister, Sarah. She died 18 months ago in a car accident. She was 25 years old, and she was the only person in the world who knew me before I became. She gestured at herself. Marcus felt his heart constrict. I'm sorry. I was supposed to be in that car with her. We were supposed to go to dinner together, but I canceled at the last minute because of a board meeting. A board meeting that could have been rescheduled, but I prioritized work over family. Again, that's not your fault, isn't it? Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. If I'd been there, if I'd been the sister she deserved instead of the corporate robot, I'd become. Maybe she wouldn't have been driving alone in the rain. Maybe she would have been more careful. Maybe nothing, Marcus interrupted gently. Accidents happen, Miss Sterling. You can't control everything, no matter how much money you have. Victoria laughed. But it was a sound full of pain. That's what my therapists keep telling me. But they don't understand that control is all I have. It's the only thing that makes sense in a world that seems designed to take away everything you love. Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing her words. Is that why you can't sleep? Because you're afraid of losing control? I'm afraid of the dreams, Victoria admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face. I hear her voice calling my name. And I wake up knowing that I failed her, that I chose work over family, and that I can never take it back. Marcus understood now. The insomnia, the desperation, the willingness to pay a stranger $1 million just to feel safe enough to close her eyes. Victoria Sterling wasn't just tired, she was haunted. What was she like, he asked. Your sister. Victoria's face softened, the corporate mask slipping away entirely. She was light. You know those people who walk into a room and suddenly everything feels brighter? That was Sarah. She was studying to be a teacher, working with kids who had learning disabilities. She said she wanted to help the ones who felt invisible, the ones who needed someone to believe in them. She sounds wonderful. She was. And I was so busy building my empire that I barely made time for her. I kept thinking I'd have more time later, that I'd be a better sister once I got the company where I wanted it to be. But later never came. Marcus watched Victoria's face as she spoke, seeing not the powerful CEO but the grieving sister underneath. You know what I think? What? I think Sarah would be proud of you. Not because of your success, but because you're trying to find your way back to the person she loved. Victoria's composure finally broke completely. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with the force of grief she'd been holding back for 18 months. Marcus didn't try to fix it or offer platitudes. He simply sat with her in the quiet space, letting her cry without judgment or expectation. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the spa, something had shifted. The walls Victoria had built around herself had finally cracked open, and the real woman underneath was beginning to emerge. When the tears finally subsided, Victoria looked up at Marcus with red-rimmed eyes. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Be human. Be vulnerable. Be anything other than what I've trained myself to be. Marcus smiled gently. You're already doing it. Victoria stared at him, something like wonder in her expression. You really won't take the money? I really won't. Even though it could change your life? My life doesn't need changing, Marcus said simply. It needs protecting. Victoria nodded slowly, understanding flickering in her eyes. Your daughter. My daughter, Marcus confirmed. She's 7 years old, and she still believes her father is a hero. I'd rather keep that intact than have all the money in the world. You know, Victoria said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, in my world, everyone has a price. Everyone can be bought or sold or manipulated. I've built my entire career on that principle. And now? Now I'm sitting in a massage parlor crying in front of a man who just turned down $1 million. And I'm wondering if maybe I've been living in the wrong world. Marcus laughed softly. It's not the wrong world. It's just not the only world. Victoria was quiet for a moment, processing his words. Then she stood up, smoothing her skirt and trying to reassemble her composure. I should go, she said. I've taken up enough of your time. Where will you go? Home. To my penthouse. To my sleepless nights and my guilt in my empty rooms. Victoria's smile was sad. Don't worry about me, Mr. Thompson. I've been taking care of myself for a long time. That's not the same as being cared for. Victoria paused at the door, her hand on the handle. Number? It's not. Marcus stood up, his decision made. The offer stands. What offer? The couch. It's comfortable, and it's quiet. And sometimes a change of scenery is all you need to reset your internal clock. Marcus's voice was gentle, but firm. No charge, no expectations, just a safe place to rest. Victoria turned to look at him, and for a moment, Marcus saw not the CEO but the exhausted woman who'd walked into his spa looking for peace. Why would you do that? Because everyone deserves to feel safe, Marcus said simply, and because I have a feeling that if you go home tonight, you're going to spend the next 6 hours staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the ways you failed instead of sleeping. Victoria's laugh was shaky. You don't know me very well, but you're not wrong. So stay. Just for tonight, let yourself be somewhere that doesn't expect anything from you except rest. Victoria studied his face, searching for hidden motives or ulterior agendas. But Marcus's expression was open, honest, free of the calculations and manipulations she'd come to expect from everyone in her orbit. You're serious. I'm serious. And you want nothing in return? I want you to sleep. Really sleep. Because I think you need it more than you need another business deal or board meeting or whatever else is waiting for you at home. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, weighing her options. Then slowly, she nodded. Okay, I'll stay, just for tonight. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile Victoria had seen from him all evening. Good. Let me get you a pillow and a blanket. As Marcus busied himself gathering supplies from the storage closet, Victoria sat back down on the couch, her mind reeling from the events of the evening. She'd come here expecting to buy what she needed, to solve her problems with money and power the way she always had. Instead, she'd found something she hadn't expected: kindness without condition, generosity without price. Marcus returned with a soft pillow and a hand-woven blanket that smelled faintly of lavender. The bathroom is down the hall if you need it, he said, setting the bedding on the couch. I'll be in the back office finishing up some paperwork. If you need anything, just call out. You're not leaving? I live above the shop, Marcus explained. Emma's at her friend's house tonight for a sleepover, so I was planning to work late anyway. You'll have privacy, but you won't be alone. Victoria nodded, touched by his thoughtfulness. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Marcus said, with a wry smile. Wait until you see if you actually sleep. Marcus disappeared into the back office, leaving Victoria alone with her thoughts and the foreign concept of trying to rest without agenda or expectation. She kicked off her expensive heels and lay down on the couch, pulling the blanket up to her chin. The spa was quiet except for the gentle hum of the air purification system and the soft patter of rain against the windows. For the first time in months, Victoria felt something approaching peace. Not the manufactured calm of meditation apps or sleeping pills, but genuine tranquility. She closed her eyes and, for the first time in 18 months, fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When Victoria woke, pale morning light was filtering through the spa's windows. She sat up slowly, disoriented and groggy, her body protesting the unfamiliar position. Then the memories of the previous evening came flooding back. The storm, the proposition, Marcus's gentle refusal, and the unexpected kindness that had followed. She'd slept for 7 hours straight. 7 hours without nightmares, without waking up in a cold sweat, without the crushing weight of grief and guilt pressing down on her chest. Marcus emerged from the back office, looking rumpled but alert, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Good morning," he said, offering her one of the cups. "How did you sleep?" Victoria accepted the coffee gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. "Better than I have in months. Maybe years." "I'm glad." Victoria studied his face, noting the slight bags under his eyes, the way his hair was mussed from running his hands through it. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little. I had some reports to finish, and I wanted to be nearby in case you needed anything." "You stayed up to watch over me?" Marcus shrugged. "Old habits. When Emma was little and had nightmares, I used to sleep in the chair next to her bed. I guess some instincts are hard to shake." Victoria felt something warm and unfamiliar unfurl in her chest. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." "What do you know?" Marcus sat down in the chair across from her, cradling his coffee cup. "I know you're carrying a burden that's too heavy for one person. I know you're grieving someone you love very much. And I know you're braver than you think you are." "Braver?" "It takes courage to ask for help, even when you're disguising it as a business transaction. It takes courage to admit you're not invincible." Victoria sipped her coffee, processing his words. "I don't feel brave. I feel broken. Sometimes broken is just another word for ready to heal." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the morning light grow stronger outside the windows. Victoria found herself studying Marcus's face, noting the laugh lines around his eyes, the calluses on his hands, the way he held himself with quiet confidence. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Of course. Why did you become a single father? I mean, I know you're divorced, but what happened?" Marcus's expression grew thoughtful. "My ex-wife couldn't handle the scandal at Meridian. She said being married to me was destroying her social standing, that she couldn't raise Emma in an environment where people were always whispering about her father. That must have been devastating." "It was. But looking back, I think she was looking for an excuse to leave anyway. We'd been growing apart for years, and the accusations just gave her a reason to make it official." "Do you regret it, the divorce?" Marcus considered the question. "I regret that Emma had to go through it. I regret that I couldn't be the husband my ex-wife needed. But I don't regret choosing truth over convenience, even when it cost me everything." Victoria felt a pang of recognition. "You chose integrity over comfort. I chose my daughter's future over my own present. I wanted her to grow up knowing that her father was someone who did the right thing, even when it was hard. And now I'm exactly where I need to be. I may not have the corner office or the 6-figure salary, but I have Emma's respect. I have work that matters, and I sleep well at night knowing that I'm not compromising my values for anyone." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know if I've ever slept well at night." "Why?" "Because I've spent so many years compromising my values that I'm not sure I remember what they were." Marcus leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Then maybe it's time to figure that out." Before Victoria could respond, the front door chimed, and a small whirlwind of energy burst into the spa. Emma Thompson, 7 years old and full of morning enthusiasm, stopped short when she saw the elegant woman sitting on the couch. "Daddy?" Emma looked between Marcus and Victoria with curious eyes. "Who's your friend?" Marcus stood up, his face lighting up with paternal love. "Emma, this is Miss Sterling. She's a client who needed a quiet place to rest last night." Emma studied Victoria with the frank assessment that only children can manage. "You look sad," she announced. "Are you okay?" Victoria blinked, caught off guard by the child's directness. I'm fine, thank you." "You don't look fine," Emma said matter-of-factly. "You look like you need a hug." "Emma," Marcus said gently, "not everyone likes hugs." "Everyone likes hugs," Emma declared. "They just don't always know it." Victoria found herself smiling despite her emotional turmoil. "How was your sleepover?" "Good. We made pancakes and watched movies and stayed up really late." Emma bounced on her toes. "Daddy, can we make pancakes too?" Marcus glanced at Victoria, then back at his daughter. "I think Miss Sterling probably needs to get home." "Actually," Victoria said, surprising herself, "pancakes sound wonderful. Emma beamed. Yes, Daddy makes the best pancakes in the whole world. Well, except for Mrs. Chen at the diner, but Daddy's are still really good. As Marcus began preparing breakfast in the small kitchenette behind the reception area, Victoria found herself drawn into conversation with Emma. The little girl was bright and curious, full of questions about Victoria's life and work. Do you have kids? Emma asked, settling onto the couch next to Victoria. No, I don't. Why not? Victoria glanced at Marcus, who was pretending not to listen while he mixed pancake batter. I guess I've been too busy with work. That's silly, Emma said with 7-year-old wisdom. Kids are more important than work. Are they? Of course. Kids are the whole point of everything. That's what Daddy says. Victoria felt her chest tighten. Your daddy sounds very wise. He is. He's the smartest person I know, except maybe for Mrs. Rodriguez, my teacher, but she knows different smart things. Marcus brought over a plate of pancakes, golden and perfectly round, with butter and syrup on the side. Emma, let Miss Sterling eat in peace. She doesn't mind, Emma said confidently. Do you, Miss Sterling? Victoria looked at the little girl's eager face, at Marcus's gentle smile, at the simple breakfast that somehow felt more luxurious than any 5-star meal she'd ever eaten. No, she said softly. I don't mind at all. As they ate breakfast together, Victoria found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. Emma's chatter was soothing rather than overwhelming, and Marcus's quiet presence was like an anchor in the storm of her thoughts. Miss Sterling, Emma said, syrup decorating her chin. Do you want to see my rock collection? Emma, Marcus warned, Miss Sterling is a very busy person. I'd love to see your rock collection, Victoria said, meaning it. Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. She disappeared into the back room and returned with a shoebox full of carefully organized stones, each one labeled with masking tape in Emma's careful handwriting. This one is from the beach, Emma explained, holding up a smooth gray stone. And this one is from the mountains, and this one is from the park, but I think it might be magic because it's perfectly round. Victoria examined each stone with the seriousness it deserved, asking questions and making observations that delighted Emma. Watching them together, Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Victoria Sterling, the ice-cold CEO who'd offered him $1 million the night before, was sitting on his couch, genuinely engaged with his daughter's rock collection. You know, Emma said thoughtfully, you should come to dinner sometime. Daddy's a really good cook, and I could show you my other collections. Emma? Marcus said quickly. I'm sure Miss Sterling has other plans. Victoria looked at Emma's hopeful face, then at Marcus's embarrassed expression. What other collections do you have? Leaves and buttons and pictures of dogs I want to adopt someday. Emma's enthusiasm was infectious. And I'm starting a collection of interesting people, but I only have 3 so far. Interesting people? People who make me think new thoughts, like Mr. Peterson, who's 93 and fought in a war, and Mrs. Kim, who speaks 5 languages. And now you. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. What makes you think I'm interesting? Because you made Daddy smile differently, Emma said with startling insight, like he remembered something happy he'd forgotten. Marcus's face flushed. Emma, that's enough. But Victoria was looking at him with new eyes, seeing not just the kind stranger who'd offered her refuge, but the man who'd somehow managed to raise a daughter with such emotional intelligence and generous spirit. Your daddy is pretty special, Victoria said to Emma. I know, Emma said proudly. He's the best daddy in the whole world. Victoria's phone buzzed, breaking the spell of the morning. She glanced at the screen and saw 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The real world was calling, demanding her attention, pulling her back into the vortex of meetings and decisions and corporate warfare. I have to go, she said reluctantly. Will you come back? Emma asked. Victoria looked at Marcus, who was studiously avoiding her gaze. I don't know, sweetheart. I hope you do, Emma said. I think you need more hugs. As Victoria gathered her things and prepared to leave, Marcus walked her to the door. Thank you, she said. For everything. Thank you for staying. For letting us help. Victoria paused at the door, looking back at the spa that had become a sanctuary for one night. Marcus? Yes? The offer still stands. The $1 million. If you ever change your mind, Marcus smiled. I won't. I know. That's what makes you extraordinary. Victoria stepped out into the morning light, her expensive heels clicking against the sidewalk as she walked toward her waiting car. But she couldn't stop thinking about the warmth of the blanket, the taste of homemade pancakes, the sound of Emma's laughter, and the way Marcus looked at his daughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. For the first time in 18 months, Victoria Sterling felt something she'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. As her car pulled away from the curb, Marcus watched from the window, Emma at his side. "I like her," Emma announced. "She's sad, but she's nice." "Yes," Marcus said softly. "She is. Do you think she'll come back?" Marcus looked down at his daughter's upturned face, at the hope shining in her eyes. "I don't know, baby, but I hope so." Neither of them knew that Victoria was already planning her return, that she'd canceled her morning meetings and instructed her driver to take the long way home. Neither of them knew that she was staring out the window, not at the city she'd conquered, but at the reflection of the woman she might become. The woman who'd slept peacefully for 7 hours in a stranger's spa, who'd eaten pancakes with a 7-year-old, who'd been offered the one thing money couldn't buy, unconditional kindness. The woman who was finally ready to remember what it felt like to be human. 3 days passed before Victoria returned to Healing Touch Spa, and she spent every one of them thinking about pancakes and rock collections and the way Marcus had looked at his daughter like she hung the moon. She tried to push the memory away, to focus on the quarterly reports and merger negotiations that demanded her attention. But her mind kept drifting back to that small, warm space where she'd slept better than she had in months. On Wednesday evening, she found herself standing outside the spa again, this time without the drama of a storm or the desperation of sleeplessness. She was simply curious. About Marcus, about Emma, about the feeling of peace that had settled over her like a blanket in their presence. The door chimed as she entered, and Marcus looked up from the appointment book he was writing in. His face registered surprise, then something that might have been pleasure. "Miss Sterling," he said, setting down his pen. "I wasn't expecting to see you again." "Neither was I," Victoria admitted. "But I was in the neighborhood, and I thought—" She trailed off, realizing how foolish she sounded. When was the last time Victoria Sterling had been in the neighborhood of anything that wasn't a boardroom or a 5-star restaurant? "You thought you'd stop by," Marcus finished gently. "I'm glad you did." Victoria glanced around the spa, taking in details she'd missed during her first visit. The walls were painted a soft sage green, and local artwork hung in simple frames. Plants thrived in every corner, their leaves catching the warm light from table lamps. Everything felt intentional but not pretentious. Comfortable, but not careless. "It's different in the daylight," she said. "Most things are." "Where's Emma?" "At her piano lesson. She'll be home in about an hour." Marcus studied Victoria's face, noting the lines of tension around her eyes, the way she held herself like she was bracing for impact. "How have you been sleeping?" Victoria's smile was rueful. "Better than before. Not as well as I'd like. I keep thinking about that night, about how peaceful it felt here. And I was wondering if you might consider a different arrangement." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "Not the $1 million," Victoria said quickly. "I understand that's off the table. But maybe I could just come by sometimes. Talk. Decompress. I'd pay your regular rates, of course." "Victoria," Marcus said, and she felt something flutter in her chest at the sound of her name on his lips. "You don't need to pay me to talk to you." "I don't understand." "I mean, if you want to come by and talk, you're welcome. As a friend, no transaction required." Victoria blinked. "A friend? Is that so hard to believe?" "In my experience, friendship is just a business relationship that hasn't been formalized yet." Marcus shook his head. "That's not friendship, that's networking." "What's the difference?" "Friends care about each other without expecting anything in return. They show up when you need them, not when it's convenient for them. They tell you the truth, even when it hurts." Victoria was quiet for a moment, processing this concept. "I'm not sure I know how to be a friend." "I think you do. You just haven't had much practice." Before Victoria could respond, the door chimed again, and Emma burst in like a small tornado, her backpack flying behind her and her hair escaping from its ponytail. "Daddy, Mrs. Chen taught me how to play Fur Elise's, and she said I'm getting really good." And Emma stopped short when she saw Victoria. "Miss Sterling, you came back." "I did," Victoria said. surprised by the genuine warmth in her voice. How was your piano lesson? Really good. Want to hear what I learned? Emma, Marcus said. Miss Sterling might be busy. I'd love to hear it, Victoria said, settling onto the couch. Emma beamed and launched into an enthusiastic, if imperfect, rendition of Beethoven's famous piece. Her fingers stumbled over some of the notes, but she played with such joy that Victoria found herself smiling despite the musical imperfections. That was beautiful, Victoria said when Emma finished with a flourish. I messed up the hard part in the middle, Emma admitted. But Mrs. Chen says mistakes are just practice in disguise. That's very wise. She says lots of wise things, like how music is just feelings that don't have words yet. Victoria felt something twist in her chest. That's actually quite profound. What's profound mean? It means deep and meaningful. Important. Emma nodded seriously. I like profound things. Like how the ocean is so big you can't see the end of it, and how stars are actually suns that are really far away, and how daddy's hugs can make anything better. Victoria glanced at Marcus, who was watching his daughter with unconcealed adoration. Your daddy gives good hugs? The best hugs. Want to try one? Emma. Marcus said quickly. Not everyone likes hugs, but she looks like she needs one, Emma said with 7-year-old certainty. Don't you, Miss Sterling? Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. I don't really remember the last time someone hugged me. That's terrible, Emma declared. Everyone needs hugs. They're like vitamins for your heart. Before Victoria could protest, Emma had launched herself across the room and wrapped her small arms around Victoria's waist. The embrace was fierce and warm and completely without reservation, and Victoria felt something inside her chest crack open. There, Emma said, pulling back to study Victoria's face. Do you feel better? Victoria was quiet for a moment, testing the strange sensation spreading through her chest. I do, actually. See? I told you. Emma settled next to Victoria on the couch. Daddy, can Miss Sterling stay for dinner? Marcus looked at Victoria, his expression unreadable. I'm sure Miss Sterling has other plans. Actually, Victoria said softly, I don't. Really? Really. I canceled my evening meetings. I thought maybe I'd try something different tonight. Emma clapped her hands together. Yes, we're having spaghetti and meatballs, and I'm going to teach you how to twirl your fork the right way. As they prepared dinner together in the small kitchen behind the spa, Victoria found herself drawn into the rhythm of domestic life. Emma chattered about her day at school, Marcus shared stories from his clients, and Victoria discovered that she actually enjoyed the simple act of chopping vegetables and stirring sauce. You're good at this, Marcus observed, watching Victoria expertly dice an onion. I took cooking classes in college, Victoria said, before I got too busy to eat anything that wasn't delivered or catered. What else did you used to enjoy? Before you got too busy? Victoria paused, her knife hovering over the cutting board. I used to paint watercolors mostly. I wasn't very good, but I liked the way the colors bled together on the paper. What happened to your paints? I threw them away when I moved into my penthouse. They didn't fit with the aesthetic. Emma looked up from setting the table. That's sad. Art should never be thrown away. It wasn't really art, Victoria said. It was just dabbling. All art starts as dabbling, Marcus said. The difference is whether you keep dabbling or stop. Victoria felt something stir in her chest, a longing she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten it existed. I suppose I stopped. You could start again. I don't know if I remember how. That's okay, Emma said matter-of-factly. Daddy says forgetting how to do something is just your brain making room for learning it better. Victoria looked at this wise 7-year-old and felt her heart squeeze. Your daddy says a lot of smart things. He does. He's the smartest person I know, except maybe for you. Me? You run a whole company. That's super smart. Victoria's smile was sad. Running a company and being smart aren't the same thing, sweetheart. What's the difference? Victoria considered the question. Being smart means understanding what really matters. Running a company means, well, sometimes it means forgetting what really matters. Marcus glanced at her, noting the pain in her voice. You could always remember. It's not that simple. Why not? Victoria set down her knife and looked at him. Because I have 17,000 employees depending on me. Because I have investors who expect returns. Because I have competitors who would love to see me fail. Because I have a responsibility to everyone but yourself. Marcus finished gently. Victoria's throat tightened. Someone has to be responsible. And someone has to be human. They ate dinner by candlelight, Emma regaling them with stories from school and plans for her upcoming science fair project. Victoria found herself laughing, really laughing for the first time in months. There was something about Emma's enthusiasm and Marcus's gentle humor that made the world feel lighter. "Miss Sterling," Emma said, twirling spaghetti around her fork with concentration, "do you ever get lonely?" The question caught Victoria off guard. "Why do you ask?" "Because you seem like you might be lonely. You have that look." "What look?" "The same look Mrs. Patterson had before she got her cat. Like you're surrounded by people but still by yourself." Victoria felt her chest tighten. "That's very perceptive of you." "What's perceptive mean?" "It means you see things that other people miss." Emma nodded seriously. "I see lots of things. Like how you smile with your mouth, but not your eyes sometimes. And how you hold yourself like you're afraid something's going to break." Victoria glanced at Marcus, who was listening with quiet attention. "And what else do you see?" "I see that you're nice, even though you try to pretend you're not. And I see that you make Daddy happy, even though he tries to pretend he's not." Marcus nearly choked on his wine. "Emma." "It's true," Emma said matter-of-factly. "You laugh more when she's here, and you do that thing with your hair when you're nervous." Victoria looked at Marcus, noting the way he was running his hand through his hair at that exact moment. "What thing?" "He pushes it back like this," Emma demonstrated, running her fingers through her own hair. "He only does it when he likes someone." "Emma," Marcus said, his face flushing. "That's enough." "Are you embarrassed?" Emma asked with genuine curiosity. "Yes." "Why?" "It's nice that you like Miss Sterling. I like her too." Victoria felt something warm unfurl in her chest. "I like both of you too." "See?" Emma said triumphantly. "Everyone likes everyone. That's the best kind of dinner party." After Emma went to bed, Victoria and Marcus sat on the couch, sharing a bottle of wine and talking in the soft glow of the table lamps. The conversation meandered from books to music to travel, and Victoria found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years. "Can I tell you something?" she said, curling her legs under her on the couch. "Of course. I never had a normal childhood. My parents died when I was 12, and I went to live with my adoptive father, Heiress Sterling. He was brilliant, but he was also cold. He saw potential in me, but he wanted to mold me into his image of what a successful person should be." Marcus listened without interrupting, his attention complete and non-judgmental. "I had a sister, Sarah. She was adopted too, but she was different. She refused to be molded. She stayed soft, stayed kind, stayed human. And I envied her for that. But I also thought she was naive, that she'd never survive in the real world." "What happened to her?" Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper. "She died in a car accident 18 months ago. She was coming to see me, to tell me something important. But I canceled our dinner to attend a board meeting. She was driving in the rain, and she hit a tree on a curve she'd driven 1,000 times before." Marcus reached out and took her hand. "I'm so sorry. The worst part is, I'll never know what she wanted to tell me. The police said she'd been trying to call me for hours before the accident, but I was in meetings. I ignored her calls because I was busy being important." "Victoria, that's not—" "It is my fault," Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. "I chose my career over my family, and now she's gone. And I'm here with all this money and power and success, and I traded all for just one more conversation with her." Marcus pulled her into his arms, and Victoria collapsed against his chest, sobbing with the force of grief she'd been holding back for months. He didn't try to fix it or minimize her pain. He simply held her, letting her cry until the storm passed. "You know what I think?" Marcus said softly when her tears had subsided. "What?" "I think Sarah would want you to be happy. I think she'd want you to find your way back to the person you were before you learned to be afraid of being soft." Victoria pulled back to look at him. "How do you know?" "Because that's what people who love us want. They want us to be fully ourselves, not perfect versions of what we think we should be." Victoria studied his face, noting the kindness in his eyes, The way he looked at her like she was worth saving. How did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. Your daughter. Marcus smiled. Emma has a way of seeing straight to the heart of things. She doesn't get distracted by the surface stuff. Like what? Like the fact that you're a billionaire. She just sees someone who needs kindness. Victoria felt her chest tighten. And what do you see? Marcus was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her hand. I see someone who's been carrying the world on her shoulders for so long, she's forgotten how to set it down. I see someone who's brilliant and capable and strong, but who's also scared and lonely and tired. I see someone who wants to be seen for who she really is, not what she's accomplished. And who am I really? You're the woman who cried over rock collections and laughed at Emma's jokes. You're the woman who chopped vegetables like it was a meditation and listened to a 7-year-old play piano like it was a symphony. You're the woman who's brave enough to ask for help, even when it terrifies you. Victoria felt tears slip down her cheeks again. I don't know how to be that person all the time. You don't have to be. You just have to remember that she exists. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Victoria's head on Marcus's shoulder, his arm around her waist. Outside, Portland's gentle rain began to fall again, tapping against the windows like a lullaby. Marcus? When you left your corporate job, were you scared? Terrified? How did you know you were making the right choice? Marcus considered the question. I didn't. I just knew I couldn't keep making the wrong choice. And now? Now I wake up every morning knowing that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I may not have much money, but I have something more valuable. What's that? Peace. With myself, with my choices, with my life. I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not. Victoria turned to look at him. I can't remember the last time I felt peaceful. Then maybe it's time to make some changes. I don't know how. My whole life is built around being Victoria Sterling, CEO. I don't know who I am without that. You're Victoria, Emma's friend. Victoria, who makes excellent marinara sauce. Victoria, who used to paint watercolors and might want to try again. Victoria, who sleeps better on a spa couch than in a penthouse bedroom. Victoria laughed despite her tears. That's not a very impressive resume. It's the most impressive resume I've ever heard. Victoria studied his face, noting the way the lamplight caught the gold flecks in his eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his lips curved when he smiled. Marcus? Yes? I think I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Vulnerable and terrifying and true. Marcus's breath caught, and Victoria immediately began to backtrack. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I know this is complicated, and I don't want to make things weird between us, and Marcus silenced her with a kiss, soft and gentle and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling in love with you too, he whispered, and it scares the hell out of me. Why? Because I've worked so hard to build a stable life for Emma, and falling in love with you feels like jumping off a cliff without knowing if there's water below. Victoria felt her heart sink. Because of who I am. Because of the money, the media attention, the complications. No, Marcus said firmly, because of how much you mean to me already. Because losing you would devastate me, and I don't know if I'm strong enough to go through that again. You won't lose me. You don't know that. Your world and mine are so different. What happens when the novelty wears off? When you remember that you're Victoria Sterling, and I'm just a guy who gives massages? Victoria cupped his face in her hands. You're not just anything. You're the man who saw me at my most desperate and offered me kindness instead of judgment. You're the man who's raising the most amazing little girl I've ever met. You're the man who turned down $1 million because his integrity was worth more. Victoria, I know I have a lot to figure out. I know my life is complicated and messy and probably incompatible with the kind of peace you've built here. But I also know that I've never felt more like myself than I do when I'm with you and Emma. And if that's not worth fighting for, then I don't know what is. Marcus stared at her, seeing not the powerful CEO, but the vulnerable woman who'd cried in his arms, who'd hugged his daughter like she was precious, who'd chopped vegetables like it was a sacred act. Okay, he said finally. Okay? Okay, let's try. Let's see what this could be. Victoria felt her heart soar. Really? Really? But I have conditions. Name them. First, Emma comes first. Always. If this affects her negatively in any way, we stop. Agreed. Second, I need you to be honest with me. About your life, your work, your fears. I can't love someone I don't really know. Victoria nodded. I can do that. Third, I need you to promise me that you'll take care of yourself. Not just your business, not just your image, but yourself. The real you. He promised. Marcus smiled, and Victoria felt like she was seeing the sunrise for the first time. Then let's see what happens. They made love that night, slowly and tenderly, like they were learning a new language together. Victoria had forgotten that intimacy could be about connection rather than conquest, that vulnerability could be a strength rather than a weakness. Afterward, they lay tangled together on Marcus's narrow bed, Victoria's head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Marcus? I slept here the other night because I felt safe, but tonight I feel something else. What? I feel home. Marcus pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Welcome home. The next morning, Victoria woke to the sound of Emma's laughter and the smell of coffee brewing. She found Marcus and Emma in the kitchen, making pancakes again, and felt her heart expand with a happiness she'd almost forgotten was possible. Good morning, Emma said cheerfully. Daddy made extra pancakes because he said you might be hungry. I am hungry, Victoria said, accepting a cup of coffee from Marcus. Thank you. Are you going to stay for breakfast every day now? Emma asked with hopeful eyes. Victoria glanced at Marcus, who was watching her with gentle amusement. I don't know, sweetheart. Would you like me to? Yes. We could be like a family, except different. Different how? Well, you'd be like my grown-up friend who happens to love my daddy, and we could have pancakes and tell stories and you could teach me about business stuff. Victoria laughed. You want to learn about business? I want to learn about everything. Mrs. Rodriguez says curious people are never bored. Mrs. Rodriguez is very wise. She is. She says I should ask you about what it's like to be the boss of so many people. Victoria's smile faded slightly. What would you like to know? Is it scary? The question caught Victoria off guard. Sometimes. Why? Because when you're the boss, you have to make decisions that affect lots of people, and sometimes you're not sure if you're making the right choice. Emma nodded seriously. That does sound scary, but I bet you're good at it. What makes you say that? Because you're really good at making me feel better when I'm sad. And if you can do that for one person, you can probably do it for lots of people. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Emma. That's very kind of you to say. It's not kind, it's true. Right, Daddy? Marcus looked at Victoria, seeing the way Emma's simple faith had touched her. Right. They spent the morning together, a makeshift family sharing breakfast and stories, and the kind of easy intimacy that Victoria had never experienced before. But as the day wore on, the real world began to intrude. Her phone buzzed with messages from her assistant, her board members, her investors. The quarterly reports were due, the Shanghai deal needed her attention, and there was a crisis brewing with one of their portfolio companies. I have to go, she said reluctantly, gathering her things. Will you come back tonight? Emma asked. Victoria looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. I'd like to, if it's okay with your daddy. It's more than okay, Marcus said, pulling her into his arms for a goodbye kiss. As Victoria left the spa, she felt like she was leaving a part of herself behind. The part that could laugh at 7-year-old jokes and make pancakes and fall asleep in a man's arms without worrying about hostile takeovers or stock prices. But she also felt something else. Hope. For the first time in years, she had something to look forward to beyond the next quarterly report. She had a reason to leave the office early, to prioritize her personal life, to remember that she was more than just a CEO. She had a family waiting for her. What Victoria didn't know was that her happiness was about to be tested in ways she couldn't imagine. Because in the shadows of her corporate empire, someone was watching. Someone who had noticed her absences, her distraction, her sudden interest in spending time away from the office. Someone who had been waiting for years for an opportunity to destroy her. Richard Blackwood sat in his corner office, studying the surveillance photos spread across his desk. Victoria Sterling entering and leaving a modest spa in Portland. Victoria Sterling having dinner with a man and child who were clearly not part of her usual social circle. Victoria Sterling looking happy for the first time in years. Richard smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. He'd been Victoria's business partner once, before she'd outmaneuvered him and forced him out of Sterling Enterprises. He'd been biding his time ever since, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. And now, it seemed, that moment had arrived. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd memorized years ago. "Yes, this is Richard Blackwood. I have a story for you about Victoria Sterling. A very interesting story." As Richard began to speak, weaving a web of half-truths and innuendo that would soon threaten everything Victoria had found with Marcus and Emma, Victoria was sitting in her office, staring out at the city skyline and thinking about rock collections and piano lessons, and the way Marcus's eyes crinkled when he smiled. She had no idea that her past was about to collide with her present in the most devastating way possible. She had no idea that the happiness she'd found was about to be put to the ultimate test. All she knew was that for the first time in years, she had something worth fighting for. And she was about to discover just how far she was willing to go to protect it. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, jolting Victoria from the deepest sleep she'd had in months. She'd been dreaming about Emma's laughter and Marcus's gentle hands, about a life where board meetings didn't exist, and the only deadline that mattered was getting home for dinner. "Miss Sterling?" Julia's voice was tight with panic. "You need to get to the office, now." Victoria sat up in her penthouse bed, immediately alert. "What's wrong?" "The Portland Tribune just published a story about you. It's not good." Victoria's blood turned to ice. "What kind of story?" "The headline is Sterling CEO's Secret Life. Billionaire's desperate pursuit of inappropriate relationship with struggling single father. There are photos, Miss Sterling. Photos of you entering and leaving the spa, having dinner with Mr. Thompson and his daughter. The article suggests that you've been paying him for companionship." Victoria felt the world tilt on its axis. "That's not true." "I know that, but the story is already being picked up by national outlets. The board is in emergency session. Your phone is ringing off the hook." Victoria closed her eyes, her mind racing. "Who's the source?" The byline says, "Anonymous tip from a concerned business associate." "But Miss Sterling, there's more. The article mentions your late sister Sarah, suggests that your erratic behavior began after her death. It paints you as unstable, desperate, using your wealth to buy affection." Victoria felt sick. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. There's something else. Mr. Thompson's ex-wife has been contacted. She's giving an interview to Channel 7 this afternoon about his pattern of inappropriate relationships with wealthy women." The phone slipped from Victoria's hand. Marcus's ex-wife, the woman who'd left him during the scandal at Meridian Industries, who'd tried to use his disgrace to gain full custody of Emma. She was being pulled into this nightmare, weaponized against the man Victoria loved. Victoria dressed quickly, her mind spinning with damage control strategies. She could contain this, she told herself. She'd weathered corporate storms before. But as she rode the elevator down to her waiting car, she couldn't shake the image of Emma's trusting face, of Marcus's gentle smile, of the fragile happiness they'd built together. The Sterling Enterprises building was under siege. News vans lined the street, reporters shouting questions at anyone who entered or left. Victoria's security team created a corridor through the chaos, but she could hear the questions being hurled at her. "Miss Sterling, is it true you offered a massage therapist $1 million for sex? Are you having a breakdown following your sister's death? How do you respond to allegations that you're exploiting a single father's financial desperation?" Victoria kept her face impassive, but inside she was crumbling. Every question was a knife twist. Every camera flash a reminder of how quickly her private joy had become public scandal. The emergency board meeting was a battlefield. 12 faces around a mahogany table, all looking at Victoria with expressions ranging from disappointment to barely concealed glee. At the head of the table sat Harold Brennan, the board's senior member and Victoria's longtime adversary. "Victoria," Harold began, his voice dripping with false concern, "we need to discuss the situation." "There is no situation," Victoria said, taking her seat with practiced composure. "There's a hit piece based on anonymous sources and deliberate misrepresentation." "The photos don't lie," said Margaret Chen, another board member. "You've been seen repeatedly at this establishment. Your behavior has been increasingly erratic. The Shanghai deal fell through last week. The Shanghai deal fell through because of market conditions, not because of my personal life. Your personal life is affecting your professional judgment," Harold said. "The optics are disastrous. A billionaire CEO paying for companionship from a massage therapist? Do you understand what this does to our company's image? Victoria felt her temper flare. I'm not paying anyone for anything inappropriate. Marcus Thompson is a legitimate business owner and a good man who's being dragged through the mud because of his association with me. So you admit to a relationship with this man? I admit to having a life outside of this boardroom. Something I'd recommend to all of you. Harold leaned forward. Victoria, we've been concerned about your leadership for months. The missed meetings, the distraction, the decision to turn down the international ventures position last week. And now this scandal. What scandal? I haven't broken any laws. I haven't violated any ethical guidelines. I've done nothing but try to find some measure of personal happiness. At what cost? Margaret demanded. The stock price is down 12% since the story broke. We have investors calling for your resignation. We have clients questioning whether they want to be associated with Sterling Enterprises while you're at the helm. Victoria looked around the table at faces she'd known for years, people she'd made wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. So what are you proposing? A leave of absence, Harold said. Indefinite. Until you can resolve your personal issues and the media attention dies down. That's not going to happen. Then we'll have to consider other options. Victoria stood up, her hands flat on the table. Are you threatening me? We're trying to save this company, Harold said. With or without you. Victoria stared at him, understanding finally dawning. You orchestrated this. You wanted me gone, so you found a way to make it happen. Victoria, that's paranoid thinking. Perhaps you should consider that your judgment really is impaired. The only thing impaired is your integrity. Victoria gathered her things. I'm not taking a leave of absence. I'm not resigning. And I'm not letting you destroy a good man's life because you can't stand that I found happiness outside of your control. She walked out of the boardroom, her heels clicking against the marble floor like gunshots. But as she reached her office, her phone rang. It was Marcus. Victoria, we need to talk. His voice was strained, and Victoria felt her heart sink. I'm on my way. No, don't come here. There are reporters outside the spa. Emma can't even go to school. My ex-wife is threatening to file for emergency custody, claiming that my association with you makes me an unfit parent. Victoria sank into her chair. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen. I know. But it is happening. And I need to protect my daughter. We can fight this. I have the best lawyers in the country. We can prove that everything in that article is false. At what cost? How long will it take? How many more headlines will Emma have to endure? How many more questions about her father's fitness as a parent? Victoria felt tears streaming down her face. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe we moved too fast. Maybe we didn't think this through. Don't do this, Marcus. Don't let them win. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about Emma. She's 7 years old, and she doesn't understand why people are saying terrible things about her father. She doesn't understand why we can't leave the apartment without being followed by cameras. It will blow over. These things always do. Will it? Or will this follow us forever? Will Emma grow up being known as the daughter of the man who had an inappropriate relationship with a billionaire? Will she be questioned about it in job interviews, in relationships, for the rest of her life? Victoria felt her world crumbling. I love you. I love you too. That's why this is so hard. Then fight for us. Fight for what we have. I am fighting. I'm fighting for my daughter's future. And right now, that means stepping away from this chaos until it dies down. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the weight of every decision she'd made, every enemy she'd created, every moment of happiness she'd dared to steal from the corporate machine that had consumed her life. I understand, she whispered. Do you? I understand that you're a good father. I understand that Emma comes first. I understand that loving me comes with a cost you shouldn't have to pay. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Victoria, I'm going to fix this, she said, her voice suddenly strong. I'm going to find out who's behind this and make them pay. I'm going to clear your name and protect Emma and make sure this never happens again. How? I don't know yet, but I will. After Marcus hung up, Victoria sat in her office, staring out at the city she'd conquered, but that now felt like a prison. Her assistant knocked, entering with a stack of messages and a concerned expression. Miss Sterling, Channel 7 is asking for a comment about the custody hearing. And there's a gentleman here to see you, Richard Blackwood. He says it's urgent. Victoria's blood turned to ice. Richard Blackwood, her former business partner, the man she'd outmaneuvered and forced out of Sterling Enterprises 5 years ago. The man who'd sworn he'd make her pay for destroying his career. Send him in. Richard entered her office like he owned it, impeccably dressed and wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was handsome in a cold way, with silver hair and shark-like eyes that missed nothing. Victoria, he said, settling into the chair across from her desk. You look terrible. What do you want, Richard? To help, actually. I heard about your little situation. Terrible shame. Really. Such a promising relationship. Destroyed by media scrutiny. Victoria studied his face, looking for tells. You did this. Did what? You leaked the story. You orchestrated this whole thing. Richard's smile widened. Victoria, you're being paranoid. Though I suppose recent events would make anyone a bit unstable. Why? Why what? Why destroy Marcus? Why involve Emma? They never did anything to you. Richard leaned forward, his mask finally slipping. Because I wanted to hurt you the way you hurt me. Because I wanted to show you what it feels like to lose everything you care about. Because I wanted to prove that your Ice Queen act is just that, an act. You destroyed an innocent man's life for revenge? I exposed the truth. That Victoria Sterling is so desperate for human connection that she'd pay $1 million for a massage therapist's attention. That she's so broken by her sister's death that she's making increasingly erratic decisions. That she's unfit to lead a company. Victoria felt rage building in her chest. You're sick. I'm successful. In fact, I'm about to be more successful than I've ever been. Richard stood up, smoothing his jacket. Harold Brennan and I have been talking. He's very concerned about your leadership. So concerned, in fact, that he's willing to support my bid to acquire Sterling Enterprises. Victoria's world tilted. What? A hostile takeover. I've been quietly acquiring shares for months, building a coalition of investors who've lost faith in your leadership. Today's scandal was just the final nail in the coffin. You can't do this. I already am. By the end of the week, I'll have controlling interest in Sterling Enterprises. And my first act as CEO will be to clean house, starting with you. Victoria felt the walls closing in. The board will never support you. The board will support whoever can restore stability and profitability. And after today's stock price plunge, I'm looking very attractive. Richard headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Victoria? I'd stay away from your massage therapist if I were you. My sources tell me his ex-wife is very motivated to paint him as an unfit father. Something about a pattern of inappropriate relationships with powerful women. Tragic, really. After Richard left, Victoria sat in stunned silence. She'd been outmaneuvered, outplayed, and outwitted. Everything she'd built, everything she'd sacrificed for, was about to be taken away. And the man she loved was being destroyed in the process. But as she sat there, feeling the weight of defeat, Victoria remembered something Emma had said. Everyone likes everyone. That's the best kind of dinner party. Emma. The little girl who saw the world in terms of kindness and connection rather than power and profit. The little girl who was now being traumatized because of Victoria's past decisions and present enemies. Victoria picked up her phone and dialed a number she'd memorized years ago but never used. Detective Morrison? This is Victoria Sterling. I need to discuss my sister Sarah's death. I have reason to believe it wasn't an accident. 3 hours later, Victoria was sitting in a police conference room, staring at a file folder that contained everything the Portland Police Department had on Sarah's death. Detective Morrison, a weathered man in his 50s, watched her with curious eyes. Miss Sterling, I have to ask why you're bringing this up now. Your sister's death was investigated thoroughly. The evidence clearly showed it was an accident. What if I told you that the man who's currently trying to destroy my company admitted to me that he wanted to hurt me the way I hurt him? What if I told you that he's been planning this revenge for years? I'd say that's interesting, but not evidence of murder. Victoria opened the file, studying the photos of Sarah's car, the skid marks on the road, the coroner's report. Sarah was an excellent driver. She'd driven that road hundreds of times. The weather wasn't that bad that night. Accidents happen, Miss Sterling. even to good drivers. What about the brake lines? Detective Morrison frowned. What about them? Were they checked for tampering? There was no reason to suspect foul play. The accident was consistent with weather conditions and driver error. Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. I want them checked now. Miss Sterling, I can't just reopen a closed case because you have a feeling. I'll pay for an independent investigation. I'll hire the best forensic experts in the country. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that my sister was murdered. Detective Morrison studied her face. You really believe this? I believe that Richard Blackwood is capable of anything. And I believe that my sister was killed because she was going to tell me something that would have ruined his plans. What kind of plans? Victoria thought back to the last conversation she'd had with Sarah, the urgency in her sister's voice when she'd called repeatedly that night. Sarah worked for a nonprofit that provided services to women and children in crisis. She had access to financial records, donor information, government contracts. What if she discovered something that connected Richard to fraud or embezzlement? That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime. And if I'm right, then Richard Blackwood has been planning this revenge for years. He killed my sister to prevent her from exposing him, then waited for the perfect moment to destroy me. Detective Morrison was quiet for a long moment. I'll make some calls, see what I can dig up. But Miss Sterling, you need to understand that even if we find evidence of tampering, proving murder after 18 months is going to be nearly impossible. I don't need you to prove murder. I need you to prove that Richard Blackwood is not the man he pretends to be. I need you to give me ammunition to fight back. As Victoria left the police station, her phone rang. It was Marcus. Victoria, I need to see you. Something's happened. What's wrong? Emma's missing. Victoria's blood turned to ice. What do you mean missing? She was supposed to be at school, but when I went to pick her up, they said she never arrived. Her friend's mother was supposed to drive her, but Emma never showed up at their house either. Victoria was already running toward her car. Have you called the police? They said it's too early to file a missing person report. They think she's just hiding somewhere because of all the media attention. Where are you? At the spa. Victoria, I'm scared. What if someone took her? What if this is connected to the articles? Victoria's mind raced. Richard Blackwood had admitted to wanting to destroy her. He'd orchestrated the media campaign against Marcus. He'd possibly killed Sarah to prevent her from exposing him. Was he capable of kidnapping a 7-year-old girl? Marcus, I'm on my way, and I'm calling my security team. We're going to find her. Victoria drove through Portland streets with a desperation she'd never felt before. Emma Sweet, innocent Emma, who collected rocks and played piano and gave the best hugs in the world, was somewhere out there, possibly in danger because of Victoria's past. When she reached the spa, she found Marcus pacing frantically, his phone pressed to his ear as he called everyone he could think of. He looked up when she entered, his eyes wild with fear. Any word? Victoria asked. Nothing. I've called everyone, her friends, her teachers, the neighbors. No one's seen her. Victoria pulled out her phone and dialed her head of security. This is Victoria Sterling. I need every available agent in Portland, Oregon. We're looking for a missing 7-year-old girl. Emma Thompson. Blonde hair, blue eyes, probably wearing her school uniform. As she gave the details, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. If you want to see Emma again, you'll withdraw your police inquiry and accept my takeover offer. You have 24 hours. And Victoria? Don't involve the authorities. Emma's safety depends on your cooperation. Victoria showed the text to Marcus, who went pale. He has her. Who has her? Richard Blackwood, the man who's been trying to destroy me. The man who killed my sister. Victoria's voice was deadly calm. And now he's made the biggest mistake of his life. Marcus grabbed her arm. We have to call the police. Number? If we call the police, he'll know. And Emma. Victoria couldn't finish the sentence. So what do we do? Victoria looked at Marcus, seeing the fear and desperation in his eyes. We get her back. Whatever it takes. How? I'm going to give him what he wants. I'm going to withdraw the police inquiry and accept his takeover. I'm going to let him think he's won. And then I'm going to destroy him. Victoria spent the next hour making calls, setting her plan in motion. She contacted Detective Morrison and told him to suspend the investigation into Sarah's death. She called Harold Brennan and told him she was considering the board's request for a leave of absence. She sent Richard Blackwood a message agreeing to meet with him to discuss his takeover offer. All the while, her security team was working behind the scenes, using every resource at their disposal to locate Emma. They traced Richard's movements, identified his associates, monitored his communications. They were closing in, but time was running out. At 8 p.m., Victoria received another text. Pier 47, come alone, any sign of security or police, and the girl disappears forever. Victoria looked at Marcus, who was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. I have to go. I'm coming with you. Number, he said, to come alone. I'm not letting you face this monster by yourself. Victoria knelt in front of him, taking his hands in hers. Marcus, I need you to trust me. I need you to stay here and wait for my call. If something goes wrong, if you don't hear from me in 2 hours, then you call the police. Victoria, I love you, I love Emma, and I'm going to bring her home. Victoria kissed him gently, then stood and walked toward the door. She was no longer the broken woman who'd stumbled into a spa looking for peace. She was Victoria Sterling, and she was going to war. Pier 47 was dark and deserted. The only sounds the lapping of water against the dock and the distant hum of traffic. Victoria walked slowly toward the end of the pier, her heels clicking against the wooden planks. She could see a figure waiting in the shadows, and her heart pounded with fear and rage. Richard, she called out. He stepped into the light, and Victoria saw that he was holding Emma's hand. The little girl looked scared but unharmed, her school uniform wrinkled and her hair mussed. Miss Sterling, Emma called out, trying to run toward her, but Richard held her back. Not so fast, Richard said. We have business to discuss. Victoria forced herself to remain calm. Let her go. This is between us. On the contrary, this is about all of us, about the choices we make and the consequences we face. Richard's smile was cold. You chose to destroy my career, Victoria. You chose to steal my company, my reputation, my future. And now you're going to choose between your empire and this little girl's life. I'll give you whatever you want. Just let Emma go. I want Sterling Enterprises. I want your resignation. I want you to publicly admit that you're unfit to lead a company. And I want you to disappear from Portland and never contact Marcus Thompson or his daughter again. Victoria felt her heart breaking. Dawn. Just like that? Just like that. I'll sign the papers tonight. But first, you let Emma go. Richard studied her face, looking for deception. You're not going to fight this? I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of hurting people I care about. You win, Richard. You get everything you wanted. Richard's expression shifted, confusion replacing confidence. I don't believe you. Believe it. The only thing I care about now is making sure Emma gets home safely to her father. Victoria took a step forward, her hands visible and empty. Please. She's just a child. She doesn't deserve this. For a moment, Richard seemed to waver. Then his face hardened again. Number. You're lying. You're Victoria Sterling. You don't give up. You don't surrender. I do when a child's life is at stake. Prove it. Victoria pulled out her phone and called Harold Brennan. Harold, it's Victoria. I'm formally resigning as CEO of Sterling Enterprises, effective immediately. I'm also recommending that the board accept Richard Blackwood's acquisition offer. She paused, looking directly at Richard. I'm done fighting. Richard's eyes widened. You're serious. I'm serious. Now let Emma go. Richard released Emma's hand, and the little girl ran toward Victoria, who caught her in a fierce embrace. Are you okay, sweetheart? I was scared, Emma whispered. But I knew you'd come for me. Victoria felt tears streaming down her face. I'll always come for you. Always. How touching, Richard said mockingly. The Ice Queen finally melts. Too bad it's too late. Victoria looked up at him, still holding Emma. It's over, Richard. You have what you wanted. Do I? Because I'm thinking that maybe I want more. Maybe I want to make sure you never interfere with my business again. Maybe I want to make sure you never have the chance to rebuild what I've torn down. Victoria felt a chill of real fear. What are you talking about? I'm talking about a tragic accident. A billionaire CEO, distraught over her public humiliation, takes a little girl with her on a final boat ride. Neither of them survives. You're insane. I'm thorough. You see, Victoria, I learned something from your sister's death. Sometimes the only way to guarantee silence is to make sure there's no one left to speak. Victoria's blood turned to ice. You killed Sarah. I killed a loose end. She was going to expose my side business skimming funds from the nonprofit she worked for, selling donor information to competitors. Nothing personal, just business. But she was too honest for her own good, just like you're being now. You monster. I'm a survivor. And survivors do whatever it takes to win. Richard pulled out a gun, pointing it at Victoria and Emma. Now, let's take a little boat ride. Victoria held Emma tighter, her mind racing. She had to get Emma to safety, but she was trapped on a pier with a madman who'd already killed once and was prepared to kill again. Richard, please. Take me, but let Emma go. She's just a child. She's a witness. And in my experience, witnesses are liabilities. I'm not a witness, Emma said suddenly, her voice small but clear. I'm a person, and you're a very sad man. Richard stared at her. What did you say? I said you're sad. Really, really sad. Because if you weren't sad, you wouldn't need to hurt people to feel better. Victoria felt her heart swell with pride and terror. Emma was being brave, but she was also putting herself in more danger. Emma, shh, Victoria whispered. No, I want to tell him, Emma said, looking directly at Richard. My daddy says that hurt people sometimes hurt other people. But he also says that doesn't make it okay. He says the only way to stop hurting is to choose to be kind instead. Richard's hand was shaking, the gun wavering. You don't know what you're talking about. I know you're scared. I know you feel bad inside. But taking us on a boat ride isn't going to make you feel better. It's just going to make you feel worse. Shut up, Richard said, but his voice was less certain. I also know something else, Emma continued. I know that Miss Sterling has really good friends who care about her, and I know they're probably looking for us right now. As if summoned by her words, the sound of sirens filled the air. Police cars were racing toward the pier, their lights flashing red and blue against the darkness. Richard's face went pale. You called them. I didn't, Victoria said. But I'm glad someone did. This is Detective Morrison, Portland Police. The pier is surrounded. Put down your weapon and release the hostages. Richard spun around wildly, the gun still in his hand. This isn't over. Victoria, even if I go to prison, I've still destroyed everything you care about. Your company, your reputation, your relationship with Marcus. You have nothing left. Victoria stood up slowly, still holding Emma. You're wrong. Am I? You took my company. You damaged my reputation. You've tried to destroy my relationship with Marcus. But you couldn't take the most important thing. What's that? Victoria looked down at Emma, who was clinging to her with complete trust. You couldn't take love. You couldn't take family. You couldn't take the connections that actually matter. Richard laughed bitterly. Love doesn't pay the bills, Victoria. Family doesn't build empires. Connections don't create wealth. No, Victoria agreed. But they create something more valuable. They create meaning. They create purpose. They create reasons to wake up in the morning that have nothing to do with stock prices or board meetings. You're pathetic. I'm free. For the first time in my life, I'm free. Free from the need to prove myself to people like you. Free from the prison I built out of ambition and fear. Free to choose what really matters. The police were moving closer, their weapons drawn. Richard was trapped, his grand plan crumbling around him. Richard Blackwood, Detective Morrison called out. This is your last warning. Drop your weapon. Richard looked at Victoria, his eyes wild with desperation. If I can't have Sterling Enterprises, then no one can. If I can't destroy you, then I'll destroy everything you touch. He raised the gun, but before he could fire, Victoria heard a sound that made her heart soar. Marcus's voice, calling out from behind the police line. Emma! Victoria! Daddy! Emma called back. We're okay. The distraction was enough. Richard turned toward the sound, and in that moment, Detective Morrison's team moved in. Richard was tackled to the ground, the gun skittering across the pier. Victoria sank to her knees, holding Emma tightly as police officers secured the scene. It was over. The nightmare was finally over. Marcus broke through the police line, running toward them with tears streaming down his face. He enveloped both Victoria and Emma in his arms, and for a moment, the three of them just held each other, breathing in the reality of survival. "I was so scared," Marcus whispered. "I thought I'd lost both of you." "We're okay," Victoria said. "We're all okay." "Is it really over?" Emma asked, looking up at both of them. Victoria looked toward the police cars, where Richard was being placed in handcuffs. "Yes, sweetheart, it's really over." As the three of them walked away from the pier, arm in arm, Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced in years: complete and total peace. She'd lost her company, her fortune, her empire, but she'd gained something infinitely more valuable. She'd gained a family. Detective Morrison approached them as they reached the parking area. "Miss Sterling, we're going to need statements from all of you, but I wanted you to know we found evidence in Blackwood's hotel room. Documents, recordings, proof of his involvement in your sister's death. We also found evidence of the financial crime she was going to expose. He's going away for a long time." Victoria felt tears of relief and grief mixing on her cheeks. "Thank you. There's something else. The forensic team examined your sister's car. The brake lines were tampered with. It wasn't an accident." Victoria nodded, feeling a strange sense of closure. Sarah's death had been avenged, and her killer would face justice. 3 months later, Victoria stood in the small backyard of Marcus's house, watching Emma play on the swing set they'd built together. The cherry tree was in full bloom, its pink petals falling like snow across the grass. Victoria had lost Sterling Enterprises, but she'd gained something far more valuable. She'd gained herself. She'd used her remaining personal funds to start a foundation for women leaving high-pressure careers, helping them find new paths and new purposes. She'd bought a small house 3 blocks from Marcus's spa, close enough to be part of their daily lives, but far enough to maintain her independence. She'd also started painting again, watercolors, just like she'd done in college. They weren't masterpieces, but they were honest, and they were hers. "Penny for your thoughts," Marcus said, joining her on the back porch. "Just thinking about how strange life is. 6 months ago, I would have said that losing my company would be the end of the world. Now I can't imagine wanting that life back. Any regrets?" Victoria considered the question. "I regret that Sarah died. I regret that Emma had to go through that trauma. I regret that it took me so long to realize what really mattered. But do I regret losing the company? I regret what I had to become to build it." Marcus wrapped his arms around her from behind. "And now? Now I'm figuring out who I am when I'm not trying to be anyone else." "And who is that?" Victoria leaned back against his chest, watching Emma chase butterflies across the lawn. "I'm the woman who loves a massage therapist and his remarkable daughter. I'm the woman who makes terrible pancakes but excellent marinara sauce. I'm the woman who's learning that success isn't about what you acquire, but about what you choose to keep." Emma ran over to them, her face flushed with happiness. "Victoria, look what I found." She held up a perfectly round stone, smooth and white. "It's beautiful," Victoria said. "What are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to put it in my special collection. The one with things that remind me of the people I love." Victoria felt her heart swell. "What does this one remind you of?" "You," Emma said simply. "Because you're like this rock. You went through lots of hard things that made you smooth and strong, but you're still soft on the inside." Victoria knelt down to Emma's level. "That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. It's true. And you know what else?" "What?" "I think you're going to be the best mom ever." Victoria's breath caught. "What makes you say that?" Emma grinned. "Because you're getting lots of practice with me. And because Daddy asked me what I thought about you being part of our family forever. And I said yes." Victoria looked up at Marcus, who was watching them both with a smile that could have powered the entire city. "Is that so?" "Well," Marcus said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket, "I was hoping to do this more romantically, but Emma has a point. We've been practicing being a family for months now. Maybe it's time to make it official." Victoria's eyes filled with tears as Marcus got down on one knee, right there in the backyard with Emma as their witness and the cherry blossoms falling around them like confetti. "Victoria Sterling," Marcus said, his voice gentle but sure, "will you marry me? Will you be Emma's stepmother? Will you help me build a life that's measured not in dollars but in moments like this?" Victoria looked at the man who'd seen her at her most desperate and offered her kindness instead of judgment. She looked at the little girl who'd taught her that love was the only currency that really mattered. She looked at the small, imperfect, absolutely perfect life they'd built together. Yes, she said, her voice thick with tears. Yes to all of it. As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple band with a small diamond, nothing like the ostentatious jewelry she'd once worn, Victoria felt something settle in her chest. Not the sharp ambition that had driven her for so many years, but something softer and more sustainable. Contentment, peace, home. Emma threw her arms around both of them, and they held each other as the cherry blossoms continued to fall, nature's own celebration of new beginnings. Are we going to have a wedding? Emma asked excitedly. We are, Victoria said. What kind of wedding do you think we should have? Emma considered this seriously. A small one, with good food and pretty flowers and all our friends. And maybe we could have it right here in the backyard, under the cherry tree. Victoria looked around at the modest yard, the simple house, the life that was so different from everything she'd once thought she wanted. I think that sounds perfect. And it did. For the first time in her life, Victoria Sterling had everything she needed. Not everything she'd once thought she wanted, but everything that actually mattered. She had love, she had family, she had peace. She had finally come home. As the sun set over Portland, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Victoria realized that sometimes the most valuable things in life were the ones you couldn't put a price on. Sometimes the best investments were the ones you made in people rather than portfolios. And sometimes the most successful life was the one where you had the courage to walk away from everything you'd built to find everything you'd been missing. The single dad had turned down her $1 million offer, but in the end, he'd given her something worth infinitely more. He'd given her herself. And that, Victoria thought as she watched Emma chase fireflies in the gathering dusk, was the most profitable deal she'd ever made.